When you first start thinking about improvising solos on guitar, it can seem like a pretty lofty goal, but it can be a whole lot easier than you think it is as long as you know how to start. So in this lesson, I'm going to give you exact guideposts on what notes to land on when you're improvising a solo, specifically over a 1-4-5 blues. Because soloing over a blues is one of the most foundational approaches to improvising guitar. But remember to stick around till the very end of the lesson because I've got a free gift for you and your guitar, and you're both going to love it. So when you're improvising over a song or a backing track, you're dealing with a musical key. And the most obvious approach to playing a proper sounding solo would be to play within that key. And with that approach, you can do what most guitar players do, which is pick a one-size-fits-all scale and just wail on that the whole time. So for example, if we're playing a blues in A, we could get away with just playing the A minor pentatonic scale the entire time. So we're going to take a look at that as our starting point, and then from there we're going to expand even further to a more sophisticated style of improvising. Okay, so this A minor pentatonic scale, it starts off on the 5th fret of low E. You have 5th fret, 8th fret, then you have 5th fret, 7th fret on A, 5th, 7th on D, 5th, 7th on G, and then 5th and 8th on B and high E. If you were to play that scale over an A blues, technically you'd be playing in key. However, that doesn't mean that the best idea is to just walk up and down the scale like with no pauses or phrasing or any kind of nuance to it. So you got to think of a scale as a tool. It's conveying musical information, right? So you want to be able to use that information to actually say something as opposed to just speaking the scale note for note and then just never stopping, right? Because a lot of times when I hear guitar players improvising, they just kind of keep going like the Energizer Bunny, just like... The thing is, when that happens, it can feel really uninspiring and you kind of feel like you're on autopilot, but not in a good way. You're not really in control. You're just kind of like going through the motions, but you're not really saying anything. And that's where the concept of phrasing comes in. You want to think about playing guitar like you do speaking, right? There's such a thing as breaths in between sentences, and that's kind of how we convey language, right? We can speak it, we can use vocal inflections. There's all kinds of means to human communication, right? It's not just words, right? So you can think of that same thing when it comes to playing guitar. And if we want to think about phrases, just take a couple notes, just kind of play them in a way that just kind of feels like it's on purpose, then take a break and then play something else. So the approach that I would call that is a call and response approach. So for example, if you want to play a lick as your call, you can do something like this. And then your response could be something like this. So even though I'm keeping it simple and not doing anything particularly exciting with the scale, I'm still timing those phrases so it gives you that call and response kind of vibe. See what I mean? And we're going to get even simpler with that concept and focus solely on root notes for now. So the root notes would be the note reflecting the key. So if we're playing in an A blues, the root note or the tonic would be an A note. And there happen to be 3 A notes contained within this A minor pentatonic scale. We have this one, 5th fret on low E, we have this one, 7th fret on D, and then we have this one, 5th fret on high E. So we have A, A, A. What I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna throw on a backing track. It's gonna be a slow blues in A, and I'm only gonna focus on those root notes, trying to do it in a call and response kind of format. I'm gonna start with a call lick. Here's my response. Here's another call lick. So I wanted to keep that brief, and I wasn't doing anything super exciting, but I hope you were picking up what I'm putting down here, right? With the whole call and response thing, and just focusing on those root notes and making them count. Because here's the thing, root notes you can consider them as a safety net. If you're playing in any given key, if you start or end on a root note, you're pretty much going to make a safe bet that you're going to play something right. And by doing the call and response thing and adding some rhythm to those simple notes, you can actually make something sound musically coherent. Now let's expand on it further. So if we wanted to unlock other notes within the scale, we can take a look at it this way, just to kind of break it up into segments. We can have a low octave part of the minor pentatonic scale, which is this part, which obviously contains a root note. And then we have a middle octave part, which contains this root note. And then our upper octave part, which has this root note. So we can approach the scale one chunk at a time, add additional notes to those root notes, do the call and response thing, and it would sound something like this. So another simple example there, but I was approaching it one chunk at a time, keeping the call and response thing in mind, and it sounded, again, more musically coherent as opposed to just walking up and down the scale like a robot. And when you spend some time doing that and get more comfortable with it, then you can start to seamlessly move between those chunks, within that scale pattern and actually make some full phrases that are using more than just, one chunk at a time. And hey, real quick, if you're getting value out of this lesson, do me a favor, hit that like button and consider subscribing to our YouTube channel if you haven't already. It lets us know that you want to see more lessons just like this one, and we'd be more than happy to give them to you. So thanks in advance, and let's get right back to it. Now we're going to take a look at a more sophisticated way to improvise, which is focusing on the chord changes in a given progression. So if we're playing, let's say, an A blues, we have a 1-4-5 chord progression. So we actually have options to highlight the notes and not just the one chord or the key, right, that reflects the key. We have a 4 and a 5 chord that'll give us even more options to sound a little bit more interesting when we land on certain notes. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to find the root notes for the 4 and the 5 chord within that same scale pattern, not deviating from it at all. And then we're going to add some additional notes for more color later on that'll really outline the chords that we're working with. So starting with the 4 chord, which is D, or a D7 rather, we have 2 D notes within this pentatonic pattern. We have 5th fret on the A string and 7th fret on the G string. Those are D notes, D and D. So we have our 3 A notes, right, for the 1 chord. And now we have 2 D notes for the 4 chord. And then for the 5 chord, which is an E, E7, we have 2 E notes within this pattern right here. So 7th fret on the A string, and then 5th fret on the B string. So all in all, we got the root notes for the 1 chord, the root notes for the 4 chord, and the root notes for the 5 chord. So I'm going to throw that backing track back on, and I'm going to play the scale, but I'll focus on landing on the root notes to the corresponding chord. So it starts on the 1 chord. Here comes the 4 chord. Back to the 1 chord. Here comes the 4 chord. Back to the 1 chord. Here comes the 5 chord. So I hope you were listening as I was highlighting the chord changes as they approach. And I only focused on the root notes, again, not deviating at all from the minor pentatonic scale shape, and we were able to pull it off. That's technically playing over chord changes. But when we're playing over chord changes, we want to highlight notes within the chord. And obviously, chords contain more than just root notes. So we're going to add some additional notes to our scale pattern. They're going to stay within the relative neighborhood, but there's going to be some spots that are in different frets and stuff. But you'll see what I mean. And the chords that we're going to be highlighting are not just major chords, but 7th chords. So we're going to focus on that 7th scale degree to really give us a bluesy sound. So for the 1 chord, we're going to add a major 3rd. We're going to add a 5th. It's not really adding, that's already part of the scale, but that's just going to be a note that we're going to consider when we're thinking about the 1 chord, and then a flat 7, or minor 7. So we have 3rd, 5th, flat 7. Because in a dominant chord, right, a 7th chord, we have a root, 3rd, 5th, flat 7. And if you think about those notes, you can kind of hear the bluesiness happening, right? So that's all we're going to be adding as far as the 1 chord is concerned. Now for the 4 chord, D7, we're gonna add the 5th, flat 7th, and the 3rd, which the 5th and the flat 7th are already within that minor pentatonic scale pattern. So the only outside note here is this one right here, the 7th fret of the B string. And they're oriented differently. It's not like, we have root 3rd, 5th, flat 7th. It's we have 5th, flat 7th, 3rd. That's just how it has to be in order to stay in this neighborhood. But we can seamlessly go between those notes, especially because most of them are already within that pentatonic scale. Finally, for the 5 chord, E7, we have our 3rd here, major 3rd, which is the 6th fret of the D string. We got our flat 7, which is 7th fret of G, so already within the minor pentatonic. That 5th fret of B is the root note, which we've already covered. Now we got to find the 5th, which is right here on the 7th fret of the high E string. So if we were to kind of arpeggiate it, we can kind of hear the 7th chord, just like we did that with the D chord. We hear the 7th chord, and then of course with the A chord, the 1 chord, we can hear that too. So that already is implying the chord changes without any backing track to help us out, right? You can hear that, right? Now I'm gonna throw that backing track back on, and it's gonna be no holds barred. I'm gonna be playing through the scale, but I'll be focusing on those chord tones to really highlight those changes. Starts on the 1. Remember the call and response too, right? Comes 5 chord. So we've just covered a powerful way to improvise by playing in key and going even further and highlighting chord tones and playing over the changes. And if you find yourself stuck in how to create phrases, just remember that call and response approach. It works every time. And this is just the start. It begins with the blues. You learn how to navigate through a 1-4-5 because it's a lot of fun, it's quickly rewarding, and it's foundational to music as we know it. And when you get into playing different styles of music, the same principle applies as far as playing in key and focusing on chord tones. Obviously, you'll want to adapt it to whatever key and whatever chord progression you're working with. And speaking of that, we just went over the key of A today. But what if I told you that in record time, you can learn how to apply the same method in every single musical key all across the fretboard? It sounds crazy, but it's true. And it happens to be that free gift that I owe you now that you made it to the end of the lesson. And here it is. This bad boy is a free guide on how to instantly solo in any key. It's going to take what we learned today and show you how to apply it all over the fretboard in every key that you can possibly imagine. I'm serious. It's amazing. You definitely want to check it out. Just be sure to click here to claim your free copy or check the link in the description box. When you take what we've learned today and really practice it and apply it, get it under your fingers, man, you hit up your local blues jam, you're going to be turning some heads.